In recent times, the global egg shortage has pushed a lot of people to reconsider where their food comes from, and for many, that's led to the idea of raising backyard chickens. It seems simple: get a few hens, build a coop, and enjoy a steady supply of fresh eggs. At first glance, it's an appealing solution, especially when store shelves are looking emptier than usual. But here's where things get tricky. While raising chickens may seem like a great solution at first, there's no shortage of people and news sources online ready to tell you it's not as good of an idea as it seems. You'll hear warnings about the mess, the noise, and all sorts of problems that apparently come with chicken keeping. From potential health risks to the hassles of upkeep, it's easy to feel like maybe chickens aren't all they're cracked up to be. So is raising chickens a good idea or just another over-romanticized trend? Let's take a closer look and separate the facts from the fantasy before you find yourself in over your head, or up to your ankles in feathers. Let's talk about egg production, the reason most people even consider getting chickens in the first place. Now, everyone seems to think chickens are like little egg-laying robots, producing one perfectly smooth egg a day, every day, like clockwork. Well, not quite. Chickens do lay a lot of eggs, but like the rest of us, they need their breaks. Sometimes it's because of their ovulation cycle, sometimes it's the seasons. Just like people slow down in winter, so do chickens. But when they're laying, you'll get a pretty steady supply of eggs. Most backyard hens will produce eggs for about 5-7 years. And here's a fun fact: some can even keep going for a decade. That's practically retirement age for a chicken, but hey, when you've been popping out eggs for that long, you deserve a break. In a way, it's like having your own little egg factory in the backyard. Minus the corporate taxes and employee complaints, you get to be the boss and they get to be, well, chickens. But don't expect daily perfection. Even factories need maintenance days. One thing's for sure, though: waking up to fresh eggs from your own chickens is a small joy in life. You won't look at a store-bought egg the same way again, especially when you know exactly where yours are coming from, just outside your window in that cozy little coop. Now let's talk about what happens when the egg laying slows down. Chickens, just like us, don't stay productive forever. On average, a hen lives between 7 and 10 years. For the first 5 or so, you'll have steady eggs. After that, things start to taper off. But here's the thing: just because they've retired from egg duty doesn't mean they're useless. Even when your hens aren't laying eggs like they used to, they still have plenty to offer. Chickens are incredible pest control experts. They'll spend their days scratching around, eating bugs, and keeping your garden free of all sorts of pests. And let's not forget, they're like little composters on legs. Any kitchen scraps you have, vegetable peels, leftovers, just toss them to your hens, and they'll turn them into fertilizer for your garden. They're like nature's little recyclers. Personally, I've had a few retired hens over the years. My old gals may not lay much anymore, but they've transformed into the ultimate kitchen waste disposal team. I swear, nothing goes to waste around here. Plus, it's fun watching them go wild over a watermelon rind. Trust me, it's a sight to see. So while they may not be egg machines forever, they're far from done contributing. You might not be getting eggs, but the benefits of keeping older hens around are still worth it. They're low maintenance, they help out in the garden, and they'll make sure you never have food scraps sitting in the trash for too long. Now, if you're wondering how much effort it takes to keep chickens healthy, let me put your mind at ease. Chickens are way less high maintenance than, say, a dog or a cat. Think about it: no daily walks, no litter box, and definitely no chewing on your favorite shoes. Chickens, like most living things, have their ups and downs, but keeping them in good health is pretty straightforward. Most of their issues are simple to manage. For example, a clean coop and fresh water will do wonders in keeping them free from illness. The occasional dust bath, which they do all by themselves, no grooming appointment required, helps keep parasites away. You don't need to be a vet to handle most chicken ailments. Basic care will usually do the trick. For common issues like mites or respiratory problems, a trip to your local farm supply store will get you the right treatments and you're back in business. If I had a penny for every time someone asked me, "But don't they get sick a lot?" I'd probably be able to buy a whole new flock. In reality, I've found my chickens are pretty hardy. Sure, there's the occasional chicken cold, yes, that's a thing, but with a little attention, you can catch problems early. I once had a hen who developed a limp, and after a quick check, it turned out she had just sprained her leg jumping down from her perch. A couple of days later, she was back to scratching around like nothing happened. And let's not forget the fact that chickens are incredibly resilient. They don't need constant coddling or daily checkups. Keep their environment clean. Give them good food and let them do their thing. It's like having teenagers. Feed them, make sure they're staying out of trouble, and let them handle the rest. Plus, if you ever need a laugh, just watch them chase after a grasshopper. It's pure comedy. Taking care of chickens isn't rocket science. It's more like managing a laid-back little squad that just happens to lay eggs and occasionally put on a pest control show in your yard. One of the biggest concerns people have about keeping backyard chickens is food safety. You know, the classic, are those eggs even safe to eat question? The truth is, backyard eggs are perfectly safe, as long as you practice basic hygiene, of course. I mean, if you're washing your hands after dealing with the chickens and cleaning the coop regularly, you're already ahead of the game. In fact, supermarket eggs can sometimes be riskier than the ones straight from your backyard. Remember those egg recalls that made headlines? Turns out even eggs that come from large commercial farms aren't immune to salmonella scares. So, while people love to claim backyard eggs are some kind of health hazard, it's really just about knowing what you're doing. Think about it this way. Your backyard eggs travel about 50 feet from the coop to your kitchen, compared to the hundreds or thousands of miles commercial eggs travel across the country. By the time those eggs hit the grocery store shelves, they've had quite the road trip. Would you rather trust something fresh from your own yard or something that's been rattling around a truck for a week? Now, I get it. Nobody wants to gamble with food safety, but as long as your coop is clean and you're storing the eggs properly, you're good to go. Let's be honest. If your chicken is laying eggs in a tidy coop, they're probably safer than the eggs that have been sitting on a refrigerated truck for days. Plus, if you're anything like me, you can't beat the feeling of cracking open an egg you've collected yourself that morning. That's what I call farm-to-fork freshness. And hey, when your chickens are practically laying breakfast right at your feet, the eggs just taste better. Is it psychological? Maybe. But I'm sticking with it. Store-bought eggs can't compare no matter how organic the label claims they are. All right, let's talk about the one thing chicken owners don't always warn you about: the mess. Chickens may look all cute and fluffy, but put a few of them in your yard and suddenly it's like a mini construction crew moved in overnight. Those little talons? Yeah, they're like tiny shovels, and before you know it, your flower beds start looking like an archaeological dig site. Forget the idea of a perfect lawn, unless you're into that natural look that screams, "Chickens were here." But hey, it's not all bad. Chickens might love to scratch and peck at the ground, but they're also great at finding every bug, worm, or stray weed in your yard. If you're willing to share your space a little, they'll reward you by keeping pests under control. Plus, they can help loosen up your soil. Talk about free gardening help. Chickens are basically your feathery landscapers, though their design choices can be a bit chaotic. Now, the good news is you can manage the chaos. Some people swear by mobile coops or chicken tractors, a fancy name for a coop on wheels. You can roll these bad boys around the yard, so the chickens only wreak havoc in one area at a time. It's like crop rotation, but for your sanity. And hey, a little planning can go a long way in keeping your yard from turning into a chicken apocalypse. Designate a space just for them, throw in some mulch, and suddenly you're not battling the mess, you're controlling it. Sort of. Oh, and a word of advice. Don't underestimate the amount of feathers you'll find everywhere. Chickens molt once a year, and when they do, it's like a pillow exploded in your yard. But honestly, feathers are easier to deal with than dog hair. At least they don't get stuck to every piece of clothing you own. And as long as you're not tripping over them, you can just rake them up or let the wind carry them away. Problem solved. So while chickens might turn your backyard into their personal playground, it's all part of the charm, right? With a little strategy, you can enjoy the benefits of your feathery tornado without feeling like you're living in a disaster zone. Trust me, it's worth it. Now, if you're worried about chickens being noisy neighbors, don't lose sleep over it. Chickens, for the most part, are pretty quiet. Hens will generally cluck a bit when they're laying an egg. It's their version of saying ta-da after doing their daily duty, but otherwise they're content with soft clucking and scratching around. Think of it as background music for your garden. Honestly, the most noise you'll get from them is when they're laying an egg or when they get startled by something like a squirrel that's getting too nosy. Even then, it's not exactly wake the whole neighborhood level, but if you've ever met a rooster, well, that's a different story. Roosters don't care what time it is, sunrise, sunset, midnight. They'll crow whenever they feel like it. It's like they have no respect for sleep schedules, especially yours. Fun fact, the crowing isn't just a good morning call, they crow to show off, establish dominance, or just because they're feeling cocky, pun intended. That's why many urban areas actually ban roosters altogether. No one wants a 5 a.m. wake-up call every day. If you're keeping backyard chickens and want to avoid becoming that neighbor, stick with hens. They're the quiet introverts of the poultry world. I remember when my cousin got a rooster by mistake. He thought it was a hen at first, but surprise. At 4:30 every morning, that thing would crow like it had an urgent message for everyone within a mile radius. It wasn't long before the neighbors politely suggested they rehome him. The rooster, not the cousin, although some days I think they were considering both. So as long as you don't have a rooster, your chickens will keep the noise down. Hens can be chatty when they're excited, usually around egg-laying time, but they're nothing like dogs barking or the constant hum of traffic. Let's be real, compared to the other noises in city life, the occasional cluck is practically zen. All right, let's talk chicken succession plans. Yes, even chickens need a retirement strategy. So your hens are getting on in years and slowing down on egg production. What do? Some people think this is when you trade them out like they're on a factory assembly line. But that's not the only option. Chickens, even after they stop laying regularly, still have a lot to offer. Bug control, garden composting, and honestly, they're just fun to have around. It's like having a bunch of quirky grandmas in your yard, pottering about, keeping everything tidy, and clucking at you when you forget to feed them. Now, introducing some younger hens to the flock is where the real strategy comes in. Think of it as a peaceful takeover, retirement for the old hens, and a chance for the pullets, that's what you call young hens, to shine. The new hens start laying, the old hens get to relax and still contribute in their own way. And before you know it, you've got a multi-generational chicken community running smoother than most board meetings. Personally, when I added new hens to my flock, it felt like bringing in the new interns at work. Eager, energetic, but still figuring out how things run. Meanwhile, the older hens, with their seen-it-all attitudes, would side-eye the young ones like, "You'll learn soon enough." It's a balancing act, sure, but once everyone gets along, it's like having your own little chicken dynasty. One tip: don't just throw the new girls in there and hope for the best. Chickens have their pecking order, literally, so introduce them slowly. Think of it like letting the old hens mentor the new ones, but with less PowerPoint presentations and more, well, pecking. Once everyone settles in, you'll have a steady egg supply and a harmonious flock. And hey, if you're feeling really organized, you can set up a system where every couple of years you bring in new hens and retire the older ones gradually. It's like your own little backyard chicken retirement plan. Retirement with dignity for the old-timers and a fresh start for the new recruits. No pensions required. Let's tackle the myths that seem to fly around when it comes to chicken keeping. You might hear neighbors whispering about the smells and noises, or how chickens are just dumb birds with nothing better to do than lay eggs. It's like they think these feathery friends are the animal kingdom's version of couch potatoes. But the reality, chickens are fantastic little creatures with a lot to offer. First off, let's talk about pest control. Chickens are like tiny feathered vacuum cleaners, ready to gobble up bugs, slugs, and all those garden pests that think they can crash your backyard party. The more chickens you have, the fewer pests you'll find. I've watched my hens turn a bug invasion into a dinner party. And let me tell you, they're the most entertaining little exterminators you could ever wish for. They'll scratch and peck, and suddenly it's like a horror movie for the pests. One moment they're munching on your tomatoes, the next they're running for their lives. Now, about the smell, let's clear that up too. Yes, chickens can be a bit messy, but with a clean coop and regular care, the odors are manageable. Honestly, if your chickens are living in a stinky mess, you might be doing it wrong. I always tell folks that if my coop starts smelling like something died in there, it's time for some serious cleaning. I've found that keeping a regular cleaning schedule and giving the girls some space to roam keeps things fresh. Your chicken shouldn't smell worse than your uncle's old fishing gear. And here's another thing. Chickens have personality. They can be quite social and curious. Each one has its quirks, like my hen Henrietta, who thinks she's a lapdog. Seriously, she'll hop up on your knee for some attention. It's like having a bunch of little comedians in your yard, each with their own act. If only my neighbors knew the joy that comes from keeping chickens. I bet they wouldn't just see a clucking noise, they'd realize they have potential new friends. Think of it this way. Having chickens is like living with live entertainment, and trust me, It's way better than binge watching the same old reruns. So next time someone raises an eyebrow at your backyard chickens, just remember, these feathery friends bring a ton of benefits and laughter. They're not just egg layers. They're the clucking queens of your garden, reigning supreme over pests and bringing personality to your backyard. Who could resist that? All right, folks, it's time to ruffle some feathers. Figuratively speaking, of course. If you've been sitting on the fence about keeping chickens, or if you've bought into all those chicken myths floating around, let's take a moment to reconsider. The truth is, backyard chickens are not just egg-laying machines, they're weird, quirky companions, expert pest controllers, and surprisingly entertaining creatures. It's easy to dismiss chicken keeping as a messy, noisy endeavor when you only hear the negatives, but when you dig deeper, you'll discover the incredible benefits and joy they bring to your life. Whether it's the thrill of collecting fresh eggs or simply watching them strut around like they own the place, there's a lot to love. I encourage you to chat with fellow chicken owners or read up on the positives of having these clucking cuties in your backyard. If you already have chickens, share your stories. Tell your neighbors about the hilarious antics of your hens or how they've transformed your garden into a pest-free paradise. Let's spread the word about the joy of raising chickens and create a more informed community that celebrates these feathered friends. After all, who wouldn't want to be part of the clucking revolution? So let's get clucking. Who knew raising chickens could be more rewarding than scrolling through endless cat videos? It's time to embrace the joy, laughter, and fresh eggs that only our feathery friends can provide.